There's the third bad soil. It's the the thorn-infested soil. Jesus says this about the thorny soil in verse 14. He says, "The seed that fell among thorns stands for those who hear, but as they go on their way, they are choked by life's worries, by riches and pleasures, and they do not mature." So I'd like you to write this down if you would, please. The thorny soil represents an overcluttered heart. An overcluttered heart. These are the people who make a half-hearted decision for Christ. The gospel seed begins to grow in their lives, but it doesn't produce anything because their hearts are distracted and are preoccupied with other things. Well, what other things? Jesus mentions 3 of them. He says, number 1, they're distracted by the worries of this life. Worries are one thing that produce an overcluttered heart. So many Christians worry so much more than we should. And those worries choke out our relationship and our productivity for Christ. Number 2, he says many will be concerned with riches. If I remember correctly, Jesus said you cannot serve both God and money. I think he said something like that, didn't he? Many people make half-hearted decisions for Christ because they are seduced away from Christ by the almighty dollar. But Jesus tells us that wealth is deceitful because wealth promises happiness. Have you discovered that wealth really doesn't bring true happiness? Wealth promises to give you security. But have you learned that wealth really doesn't bring you lasting security? It can help here on earth, but it doesn't bring true security. It promises better relationships. But did wealth give better relationships to the prodigal son? Not really. Wealth doesn't bring better relationships. Number 3, the third thing Jesus says produces an overcluttered heart is pleasures. Here Jesus is touching on greed. Greed has been the downfall of many who seemingly were well on their way to bearing fruit for Christ. When greed takes root, it chokes out the fruit of righteousness. I want that promotion. I want that higher salary. I want that newer car. I don't care what God says. I want my girlfriend. We're going to move in together regardless of what God's word says. Our hearts were created to serve one master, and his name is Jesus Christ. And whenever anyone asks Jesus to share the throne with someone or something else, Jesus will not do it. You either serve Jesus Christ alone or you don't serve him at all. I wonder, are there any hearts like that here today? Maybe you've made a decision for Christ, but it was a half-hearted decision. You may look a lot like a Christian and talk a lot like a Christian on the outside, but deep down, there's no spiritual fruit in your life. And the reason is your heart is overcluttered. Your heart is chasing after too many different things, and as a result, your commitment to Christ is divided. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but how many of you in all honesty would say today, as I look at my life over the past few weeks and few months, my life has been overcluttered? It's very common, isn't it? We crowd Jesus out with so many things, worries and selfish dreams and pursuits. And the reason we don't bear much fruit is because we're not devoting much time or effort to bearing much fruit. Our attention is far too distracted.